The 5-minute timer didn't just run out, it shattered. In Chapter 262, the world watched as Yuta Okkotsu, piloting the hollowed-out shell of the strongest sorcerer in history, felt his connection to Kenjaku's technique begin to flicker. The tether was fraying, the brain was cooling. Sukuna's grin was widening, ready to feast on the remains of a desperate gamble. But imagine a world where the soul of Satoru Gojo didn't just pass on to the airport. Imagine a world where the soul, that stubborn, ego-driven, godlike essence, rejected the afterlife and looked at the failing consciousness of his favorite student. At the exact millisecond the technique burned out, a binding vow of catastrophic proportions is struck. Satoru Gojo's soul doesn't reclaim his body to save his life, he reclaims it to become the system. He sacrifices his humanity, his self, and the very concept of a peaceful death. In exchange, the fusion of Yuta's copy and Gojo's Limitless is permanently etched into the prefrontal cortex. The brain doesn't die, it evolves. The six-eyed king has arrived, and he is not here to save us. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of a God King. The immediate shatter point occurs the moment Sukuna reaches out to crush the skull of what he thinks is a dying Yuta. Instead of the squelch of brain matter, his hand hits the absolute infinity. But it's different. It's not the cool, repellent force Sukuna is used to. It's vibrating. The Binding Vow has fused the techniques at a molecular level. By sacrificing the mercy of the Six Eyes, Gojo has unlocked a parasitic synergy. The Limitless is no longer just a wall, it is a conduit. Because this new entity possesses copy, the Infinity now analyzes every cursed energy spark it touches. As Sukuna's hand makes contact with the neutral Limitless, the Six-Eyed King doesn't just push him back. He downloads him. Think about the sheer mechanical horror of this. Every time Sukuna tries to strike, he is feeding the king more data. This isn't just Gojo Satoru with a power boost. This is a Gojo who has removed the moral governor that kept him from simply deleting his enemies. He doesn't use blue to pull, he uses blue to create a vacuum that mimics the gravitational pull of a black hole, enhanced by the raw, boundless cursed energy reserves he siphoned from Rika's lingering connection to Yuta's soul. The fight in Shinjuku ends not with a clash of domains, but with a monologue of physics. The king explains that by fusing copy, the Limitless can now mimic the spatial properties of any technique it encounters. Sukuna fires a world-cutting slash. In any other timeline, this is the end. But the king, he doesn't dodge. He uses the Limitless to wrap the space around the slash, copying the technique's frequency in real time and firing it back, not as a slash, but as an infinite cleave. The physical world changes instantly. The atmosphere around the king becomes heavy. The blue energy leaking from his pores is so dense that the very air begins to liquefy. This isn't a sorcerer anymore. It's a walking natural disaster. The king looks at his hands. He doesn't see his students. He doesn't see the world he swore to protect. He sees vectors. He sees data. He sees a world that is inefficient. The Six-Eyed King realizes that the merger with Tenjin is no longer a threat. It's an opportunity. If he can copy the properties of a soul merger, he can become the singular consciousness of all Japan. The plot consequences are immediate. The good guys are no longer fighting to win the culling game. They are fighting to survive the savior they created. Chapter 2. The Death of the Soul. How do you look at your teacher's face and realize the person behind the eyes is a hollowed-out god? The psychological toll on the survivors is the true tragedy of the shatter. Yuji Itadori, who has spent his entire life trying to die surrounded by people, is now looking at a being that has rejected death entirely. The king speaks, and his voice is a dual-layered nightmare. It's the playful arrogance of Gojo mixed with the desperate, jagged edge of Yuta's love for Rika. But there is no warmth. There is no, "Hey, Yuji." The king views his former students as resources. Because he has lost his morality through the Binding Vow, he views the world through the lens of optimization. Maki Zenin is the first to sense it. Her lack of cursed energy makes her a blind spot in the king's new worldview. She watches him dismantle Sukuna, not with the joy of victory, but with the cold efficiency of a butcher. When Sukuna finally falls, his body turned into a geometric mess of blue and dismantle. The king doesn't celebrate. He turns to Maki and says, "You are a flaw in the calculation. You have no cursed energy to copy. You are static." The destiny shift for the survivors is a pivot from victory to exorcism. They have to kill Satoru Gojo to save humanity from the six-eyed king. Imagine the mental state of Shoko Ieri. She's in the morgue, or what's left of it, watching the monitors. She realizes that the experiment worked too well. The brain switch didn't just save Yuta, it resurrected a version of Gojo that was always hidden beneath the surface. The Gojo who at the moment of his awakening against Toji said, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one." In this timeline, he means it. The king begins to collect the remaining sorcerers. He doesn't kill them, he analyzes them. He uses copy to take Hakari's idle death gamble, fusing it with his own infinity to create a state of infinite probability. He is now a god who can never lose, because he has copied the very concept of winning. The survivors, Yuji, Maki, Hakari, and a terrified Hana Kurusu, realize the horrific truth. The king isn't stopping the culling games. He is perfecting them. He wants to trigger the merger not out of malice, but because a singular unified entity of cursed energy is cleaner than billions of messy human lives. The psychological weight on Yuji is the centerpiece. He has to grapple with the fact that his grandpa's wish is being spat on by the man who raised him as a sorcerer. Yuji's destiny shifts from the executioner of Sukuna to the keeper of humanity's grave. He realizes that the only way to stop the king is to use his own soul-swapping abilities to force a confrontation within the king's mind. A mind that is now a labyrinth of copy techniques and infinite space. Chapter 3, The Final Verdict, A Universe of Blue. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't a bad ending. It's an inevitability. The Six-Eyed King is the logical conclusion of the Jujutsu world. For centuries, the balance of the world was held together by the existence of one man. When that man died, the world fell into chaos. The king's verdict is that the world should never have the chance to fall again. My hot take? The Six-Eyed King is the only way Sukuna could have been truly defeated. Ryomen Sukuna was a natural disaster. He was the king of curses because he understood the core of cursed energy better than anyone. But the Six-Eyed King doesn't just understand the core, he replaces it. By the end of this shattered timeline, Sukuna isn't just dead, he is erased. His techniques, his soul, his very legend is absorbed into the king's copy library. Sukuna becomes just another file in the king's database. But the price of this victory is the great leveling. The king doesn't see good or evil, he sees efficiency. To him, the suffering of humans is just a byproduct of a fragmented system. If everyone is part of his limitless consciousness, there is no more suffering, no more curses, no more death. Just blue. The world becomes a static masterpiece, a perfect, unmoving, infinite portrait of Satoru Gojo's will. The tragedy is that Gojo Satoru, the man who loved his students, the man who wanted to change the world through education, is the one who ultimately smothered it in his embrace. He didn't win the brain switch to save his life. He won it because he was the only one arrogant enough to believe that his infinity was the only thing the world needed. The Six-Eyed King doesn't need a sequel. He doesn't need a next generation. He has reached the end of the script. He has copied every possibility and realized that the only constant is him. The shatter isn't just the divergence point. It's the moment the Canon realized it could no longer contain the weight of its own strongest. The king is here, and the void is finally full.